When Judas Priest walked into the studio in 1977 to record Sin After Sin, heavy metal was still finding its identity. But when they walked out, they had unknowingly created a blueprint for modern metal. This wasn't just another album, it was the record that gave birth to thrash metal, established a twin guitar attack, and it's an album that every heavy metal band will copy. It introduced techniques that are still being used by bands today. So how did a British band, fresh off their major label debut, manage to change the entire trajectory of heavy metal forever? So let's find out. So today we're going to talk about every aspect of this groundbreaking album, Sin After Sin by Judas Priest. I'm going to show you how they went from eating one meal a day to having this big budget increase, which transformed their sound. I'm going to talk about their story, about the drummers, from Alan Moore's departure to the new drummer, Simon Phillips, who was a session musician. Even though he had limited time with the band, it still helped him shape metal history. And I'm going to break down some controversial songs that split fans right down the middle, including infamous ballad that some people call a cement block in the album's flow. I'll also talk about Dissident Aggressor, how it became one of the first true thrash metal songs, which was so influential even Slayer covered it 11 years later. Plus, I'm going to show you this original vinyl pressing of Sin After Sin, and which has all the album cover, which I'm going to talk more about later. By the end of the video, you're going to understand why Sin After Sin deserves its place as one of the most important albums in heavy metal history, and why it's still influencing bands nearly 5 decades later. So I'm going to start by showing you my vinyl record. I picked it up at a Mexico City street fair, and I usually like to record this separately, so let's go to that section right now. Okay, let's take a look at the vinyl record. I bought this at a Mexico City street fair, and if you've seen my other videos, you would notice that a lot of the ones I buy in Mexico have the Spanish, but I think this is the American version, so everything here is in English. It has the Colombia sticker, so that leads me to believe it's the American version. So here's the front cover, and here's the back cover. As you can see, song titles with the person who wrote the song and some other liner notes, producer, Roger Glover, and all that. And then here is some more artwork on the back. As for the record, let me take it out. Okay, here's the vinyl with the red Columbia sticker, and it has side one with the song titles and the person who wrote the song. So there's side one. Now I'm going to flip it over. And here's side two, where it kind of looks almost identical to the first side. And that's all that came with the vinyl. I bought it used. I don't know if anything else was supposed to be in there, like inserts or anything, but that's really what I got. So let me continue with the video. So let me start about how this album came about. Sin After Sin was their major label debut as they transitioned from the independent Go Records to the major label CBS Records. This meant more money, so the band didn't have to worry about having a tight budget, which they did on the Sad Wings album, which was recorded for just £2,000. The band was very poor back those days. They had to take side jobs, and they could only eat one meal a day. But then things changed, because with Sin After Sin, they were given a budget of £60,000. The only negative from this was the previous label, Go Records, retained the rights to Sad Wings as well as some of their demo recordings. The new album was also a new beginning for the band. They had to find a new drummer. The previous drummer, Alan Moore, he played drums on every track of Sad Wings of Destiny, but he left the band permanently because he was frustrated with the financial situation while they were with Gull Records. His first replacement for the Sin After Sin recording was a session drummer named Simon Phillips. Simon Phillips didn't stay with the band because they felt his technique was too limited for the sound. Despite this, Simon Phillips' drumming did help take the band in new directions and help obtain more of a metal sound by being able to play a little faster. But unfortunately, he didn't become a permanent member, as later on Les Binks was hired for the subsequent tour, and he would go on to being one of the most influential drummers in metal. I did a video on my other channel after he passed away paying tribute to him, so you can find that if you're subscribed to my original channel, which is JC Rock and Metal Reviews. The album also showed the band evolving and becoming more of a heavy metal band. They found their formula, and they became the Judas Priest that everybody loved. The band was constantly experimenting with different things, and they ended up with a very well-rounded album which contained some faster and heavier tracks, but also some melodic ballads and a cover song I'll be talking about later on. You could even say the album had more of a straight ahead heavy rock sound. The album had a lot of variety. There were heavy sections. There were some examples of speed metal and ballads. Not only that, but some of the drumming and guitar rhythms were seen as being very influential in heavy metal. The album featured some groundbreaking guitar work from the twin guitars of K.K. Downing and Glenn Tipton. They focused on intricate chord progressions that opened up an infinite range of possibilities for fast lead playing. This album also marked the first time Judas Priest had their high-end oriented sound with piercing, screaming leads. The album was also produced by somebody you might not have expected, who happens to be the bass player of Deep Purple, and that was Roger Glover. He was recommended to produce the album because the band was not happy with their experiences with their previous record label. The band felt that the production for Sad Wings of Destiny was very disappointing, though no many fans consider that to be one of their best albums. But I think from a production standpoint, Roger Glover's work on Sin After Sin was what helped the band find what they're looking for and really helped give them this powerful sound. Sin After Sin was also the band's most commercially successful release to date. It reached number 23 in the UK albums chart, and it became the first of 11 consecutive albums to be certified gold or higher in the United States. This was a big contrast from the sales of Sad Wings of Destiny, as that one didn't sell very well at first, as it was competing with the rise of punk rock. Sin After Sin also tried to gain a commercial audience as they covered a Joan Baez song called Diamonds and Rust, and this was done intentionally as they wanted a song with commercial potential. It was a smart move, as it was the first song by Judas Priest to receive any radio play. Not only that, but it was the first opportunity to tour in the United States. Sin After Sin showed the band evolving with their image. Back then they didn't have their studs and leather image. They just dressed in contemporary mid-1970s fashions. But their appearance was not the only change. The album was also the last studio album to feature the original Gothic cursive font logo before they adopted the new one, and I'll try to hold it up right here where you can see that. That's the old logo, and then the newer one is the one you see on all of the newer albums. And not only that, but this cover, the gray mausoleum, it gave it a very Gothic feel as well. The album is also recognized for its influence on metal music, particularly thrash metal. One thing this album has going for it is the use of double bass drumming and rapid 16th note bass and guitar rhythms, and that's something that would be used by bands later on. One of the standouts in the album is Dissident Aggressor. Some people say it's arguably the first thrash metal song because it was heavy for 1977. It has a fast tempo, it was aggressive, there were pounding drums, borderline thrash riffing. Not only that, but 11 years later, Slayer covered it, and drummer Dave Lombardo actually would copy Simon Phillips' performance. There's also a song called Let Us Pray, Call for the Priest, that showed the band playing at blistering speeds. Songs filled with breakneck guitar riffs and 254 BPM. Not only that, but author Andrew L. Cope describes Sin After Sin as a key album in the development of heavy metal technique. And this was particularly for the drum innovations. There's also thrash bands that cited this as an influence, such as the band Anthrax, who hired engineer Mark Dodson for their album State of Euphoria, and the German band Sinner, who took the name from the song Sinner. Even more recently, K.K. Downing's band, K.K.'s Priest, titled their albums Sermons of the Sinner and The Sinner Rides Again, which were inspired by the aforementioned song. But despite the praise, there are some metalheads who do not like this album. Some people claim that the album had this deliberate, inconsistent tone and an unusual inconsistency of the song selection, or a mix of might and meh. Some reviewers found this variety to be a strength, showcasing the band's evolution, but others saw it as a flaw. Other people complain that the album goes back and forth between moody love ballads to bouncy mid-pace stompers to all-out brutal speeders, leading to a perceived lack of cohesion. Then there was the song Last Rose of Summer. The song is frequently singled out as one of the weaker ones. Some of the reviewers on the Metal Archives website called it a lame ballad that fails to go anywhere. Some called it painful due to its half its length being pure repetition. Some called it stylistically unfitting for the album, and one person even called it a cement block that breaks the album's consistency. A lot of people just want Judas Priest to be heavy, but not everyone's going to like it. But another person said it's not a completely done soft rock if you like that sort of thing, but it's hard to deny it feels ludicrously out of context. Another song people didn't like was called Here Come the Tears. Some reviewers on the Metal Archives website said it was boring and grows very dull and tired after the first couple of listens, with Rob Halford's vocals missing the edge and the guitar work being pretty generic. One reviewer found it a whiny, dramatic ordeal that wastes no time in grating on the ears, and a total flop that detracts from the album. Most of the criticisms were related to the fact that the album had 3 ballads and 1 mid-paced track. It wasn't just the ballads that people didn't like. There were a few people that didn't like the heavier tracks. One example is Raw Deal. This is sometimes seen as a bluesy track with a slow start, or a holdover from 1974's Rock-a-Rolla. One reviewer noted its middle solo goes on for a bit too long, also described it being plain goofy in parts. Also, the song Starbreaker, which is described by one reviewer as an odd song with a hand clapping in the chorus that comes off as corny, and the weakest of the 3 alongside Sinner and Diamonds and Rust. Another reviewer expected a brilliant fade-in of that glorious extraterrestrial feedback, but got Living After Midnight's opening and hand claps. As you can see, a lot of people complaining about those hand claps. But finally, while most fans praised the production, there were still a few people who had a few negative things to say. Some fans felt the production doesn't serve the music very well. It's described as being kind of thin at times and sounding like the studio just inflated the sound like a balloon. Overall, the sound was occasionally perceived as less epic classic rock sound compared to Sad Wings of Destiny. Ian Hill's bass is sometimes described as being barely audible despite the overall improved clarity, although many other reviews claim that they could hear his bass guitar very well. In terms of ranking, some reviewers said it was the weakest of the trilogy of Sad Wings, Sin After Sin, and Stay in Class. In other words, some people claim it to be stuck between 2 fan favorites. Let me know your thoughts on this album in the comments. In the meantime, check out this other video I did on Judas Priest Painkiller. I'll stick it right there. I show you the vinyl record. And in the meantime, thanks for watching. Please give the video a like. Subscribe if you're not already. I do videos related to physical media on this channel. Thanks for watching. I will see you in the next one.